All right, welcome in from Indianapolis. Been collecting some intel at the NFL Combine. Yes, we're going to talk about the trade interest in Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers stance. This is going to be a good opportunity to look into actual salary cap dynamics. There's a lot else to talk about. How about Rob Gronkowski as the tight end 2 to George Kittle? Gronk might be interested in a return to the NFL. And Jimmy Garoppolo is back in the news. Diana Rossini, my former coworker at The Athletic, said that the Rams are actually comfortable with Jimmy Garoppolo taking over for Matthew Stafford as their QB if they cannot find an agreement with Stafford on a new contract, because it does sound like the Rams and Matthew Stafford are far apart right now. They have opened that up to outside negotiation to help them set a price for Matthew Stafford. But we've got a lot of fascinating stuff from around the league, and John Lynch hasn't even spoken yet here at the NFL Combine. He's actually been in a competition committee meeting today. So most of the coaches and GMs who are here saw the podium today on Tuesday. Still a couple more to go before the day is over. But John Lynch is going at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. That's going to be another major 49ers intel session for us. But first, we're going to start with this one. We're going to start talking about the trade interest in Brandon Aiyuk. According to Diana is talking about a lot of stuff. Just this is what you call scuttlebutt from around the league, just the rumors around the league. People have been poking around as far as Brandon Aiyuk's availability goes. So would the 49ers be willing to trade him? And this is why I talk about this being a great lesson as far as how NFL contracts work, because we've been discussing Deebo Samuel and a potential trade over the course of the past couple weeks. The numbers for a Deebo Samuel trade aren't easy for the 49ers, but they're amenable for San Francisco, especially since Deebo Samuel's at the end of his 49ers contract, and they see him as a declining stock. Now, in the case of Brandon Aiyuk, you can argue that's also been a declining stock. The thing is, he's at the very floor of his value right now. He's coming off of a torn ACL. And when you look at Aiyuk's contract, the fact that it was signed just now in 2024 means that the 49ers are still on the hook for the vast majority of this signing and option bonus money. I mean, one of the option bonuses, which is guaranteed, still has to kick in on April 1st of 2025. So if you trade anybody that just signed a contract, you're facing a ton of prorated bonus acceleration to all hit at once. So if you look at this column right here, the $23 million signing bonus, so 80% of that still hasn't hit the cap because it's been spread out against the cap for several years. The option bonus, they're $47.8 million of option bonus money. Some of that could be traded away to another team, but the vast majority of it couldn't. You'd actually have over $40 million accelerate to hit as dead cap against the 49ers cap in 2025 if you traded Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think that the cap implications are the biggest part of the no in this entire situation. It is what you would receive in return for Brandon Aiyuk, which wouldn't be exemplary at this point. You have to remember, he is at the bottom of his value right now. He was at the very top of his value last offseason. So everybody was talking about a potential trade, including the 49ers last offseason. It obviously didn't get to that point, but since then, Brandon Aiyuk missed training camp, didn't show out well to begin the 2025 season. And then he tore his ACL and his MCL. And I think that's significant that it wasn't just a clean ACL tear, because those have been, I don't want to say easy to come back from, but there's been a well-documented success rate, a high success rate in returns from clean ACL tears. But when there's been other damage, it's been a little bit more complicated. So at this point, you're not going to get much in all likelihood for Brandon Aiyuk if you trade him, and you'd be shouldering a ton of dead money in 2025. And the 49ers, I've calculated them to have about $46 million in salary cap space. Well, you'd lose about 30. If you added the dead money on top of Brandon Aiyuk's existing cap hit, you'd lose about 30 million of that cap space this season just like that. I understand that the 49ers like pushing money back into the future and that they could restructure contracts to shoulder something like this. But if they're already going to be doing that for Deebo Samuel, that takes another bite out of the cap situation. It wouldn't be a financially efficient play for San Francisco to do it now. So when you give out these long-term contracts, you are essentially binding yourself for 2 years. In the case of other deals, 3 years. And the 49ers just finished year 1 of the Brandon Aiyuk contract. So we can go back to fact or cap. Does a Brandon Aiyuk trade make sense?
C-A-P. Cap.
It's cap. Not going to happen. 49ers aren't going to trade Brandon Aiyuk this offseason. They need a decent return, and they need to realize, and I'm sure they do realize, that you don't sell at the very lowest point for Brandon Aiyuk. You're forced into a really crappy situation if you're San Francisco. After he signs for $30 million a year, he doesn't play well and he tears his ACL and his MCL. You just have to hope that the stock rebounds before you do anything else at this point, because you're bound by that contract. So, I mean, this is going to be the headlining news of the day. Everybody's already talking about it at this point because teams are and of course, why wouldn't you be interested in buying the Brandon Aiyuk stock at this low price? I mean, you look at his base salaries over the course of the next few seasons, veteran minimum, and it's non-guaranteed $27.2 million, $29.1 million. So if you trade for Brandon Aiyuk, if the 49ers for some reason did this, the acquiring team would be sitting on a high upside bargain because they don't have to pay his signing bonus or the option bonus. Maybe part of the option bonus if they trade him before April 1st, but that gets more complicated. In simple terms, the 49ers have picked up a huge part of this bill, which is why the dead money cap hit would be so big if they moved on from Brandon Aiyuk. And an acquiring team would only have to pay a veteran minimum base salary plus probably some of an option bonus and then a veteran minimum base salary in 2026, and they'd have 4 years of team control. They'd be buying extremely low for Brandon Aiyuk with a ton of upside. So the upside would only belong to the acquiring team, which is why, from a business standpoint, a trade just would not make a whole lot of sense for the 49ers in this Brandon Aiyuk situation. But we've got other NFL Combine intel. We got a lot of intel over the course of today. News typically starts flowing in at this time of the year. I was watching some of the interviews over in the convention center today, and there was a common theme from the executives, and they were saying this is the event where the agents and executives and staffers from scouting departments are in the same place again. So you could finally meet face-to-face with people if you're working on contracts, or you could start talking about potential parameters for deals that can be signed in about 2 or 3 weeks when free agency starts. Just from a personnel standpoint, stuff can get moving because human interaction allows for that to happen. So in the case of this NFL Combine, I woke up this morning expecting some news to start rolling in, and roll in it did. Washington is open to trading Jonathan Allen, their former Pro Bowl defensive tackle, who's now 30 years old. He's got 1 year left on his deal. You guys will notice that so much of this trade stuff comes to fruition when a player is on the final year of his contract, because Jonathan Allen's play has been regressing. He was also hurt for a large part of this past 2024 season. So Adam Peters, the former 49ers executive in Washington, they've decided that they don't want to give Jonathan Allen an extension, at least at the price that he's looking for. So Jonathan Allen wants a trade. Washington is allowing him to try to set up that trade. So his representation is going to be sniffing around for interest across the entire NFL. $15 million remains on Jonathan Allen's contract. If I'm the 49ers, this is one I'd stay away from. I think they need to get younger along the defensive front. They need to infuse that position group with some energy. I think that you consider trading for A-list players. If we want to talk about an A-list defensive lineman, that is Myles Garrett. I'll have a note on him in a little bit, but he's an edge rusher, and he's definitely going to come at a much higher price than Jonathan Allen if he is available. And unlike Jonathan Allen at this point, Myles Garrett is not available. That is because Andrew Berry, the Browns general manager, said today here at the NFL Combine that the Browns are still not interested in trading Myles Garrett. Now, he said that he's got to do what's best for his team. I would offer that trading Garrett is best for the Browns because I don't see them winning a Super Bowl at any point coming up soon, given their quarterback situation. But the problem for not just the Browns, but for teams across the entire league who might be interested in Myles Garrett is that Andrew Berry has a vested interest in maintaining as strong of a roster as he can for the short term, even if it comes at the cost of building a more robust roster in the long term, because he's trying to preserve his own job. Berry's been around since 2020. Now, it might be that the Haslams, the owners who were responsible for that entire travesty of a Deshaun Watson contract. It might not be on Andrew Berry, but Berry still has to deal with the fallout. And the fallout is that Watson has been the worst QB in the NFL ever since that deal was signed, since the Rams sent that draft capital over to the Texans. Now he's torn his Achilles not once, but twice. We may never see Deshaun Watson on a football field again, but the Browns gave him a record $230 million fully guaranteed contract, so that they're without a competent quarterback, and they're also in salary cap hell. Berry is sitting here without any Super Bowl results to show for his work since 2020. So he's going to desperately try to keep what the Browns have so that he can put a line on his resume before he gets fired. So it's a dysfunctional franchise. I get it. But this is why you like to hit the reset button sooner rather than later as an NFL team, because you'd rather have decisions like the one that the Browns are making on Myles Garrett motivated from a clean slate than by a general manager who's just trying to hang on to his job. It's surrender. It's capitulation of sorts. If the Cleveland Browns give up on Myles Garrett right now, it's capitulation for their current GM, Andrew Berry. It's him saying, okay, I've got to step back and rebuild, and ownership may not have, even though ownership may be at fault for the Deshaun Watson contract, ownership may not have patience for that kind of rebuild. So you've got to keep on pushing forward. At least that is the thought process right now from Andrew Berry. So he said that the Browns are not interested in trading Myles Garrett. I think if they sustain this mentality throughout the course of this offseason, and if they do keep Myles Garrett on this football team, he ends up playing without a new deal heading into the 2025 season. I think it's likelier than not that the Browns continue to struggle because quarterback is the root of their issues, and it's unlikely they're going to be able to make a major fix at the quarterback position. And I think that it's probable that they'll look to trade Myles Garrett before the deadline. Then you're looking to sell for a lower price than right now, in all likelihood. I mean, no real victorious path here for the Cleveland Browns without acquiring a QB who actually turns things around. You can hope that you pick up a Jaden Daniels type through the NFL draft, but that was lightning in a bottle for the Washington Commanders. Well, maybe you trade for Matthew Stafford. But even then, Matthew Stafford has been the 18th ranked quarterback in the league over the past 3 years in the composite rankings. There's a reason why Diana Rossini today reported that the Rams would be comfortable ending with Jimmy Garoppolo as their starter, overpaying Matthew Stafford $55 million per year. One of the teams that has been reported to be interested in Matthew Stafford are the Cleveland Browns. The Giants, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Raiders. The Rams are looking at a QB in Stafford, who, again, I mean, we've done this here over the past couple of shows. We've shown you where Stafford has been ever since that Super Bowl year. There's a misconception that this guy is still playing at an elite level. It just isn't true. He's way over here with Aaron Rodgers. Below average efficiency, just above average accuracy. Actually, below average accuracy, just above average efficiency, but not by much. mean, he's an upper left quadrant guy. He's not where Purdy is. He's not where Mahomes is. He's not where Allen is. And I think the Rams are a forward-thinking franchise. They've got job security there with Sean McVay and Les Snead. So, of course, they're not in a desperate position like the Cleveland Browns to hang on to veterans who might be able to generate some future-facing value for them. So the Rams are saying, hey, 2 years, $110 million. I think that's what Stafford wants. He wants to be paid $55 million a year. You can't be paying for what a guy has done in the past, especially if that past is 4 years ago. You have to project forward. And projecting forward, well, you look at the analytics, they're not pretty for Matthew Stafford. He's 37 years old now. He's not going to get any younger. I don't know if it's realistic to see him getting back into the upper right quadrant here. And if the Rams agree with that assessment, which is, I think they do, they're going to have a much stricter price limit for Matthew Stafford. And if Stafford says, no, I'd rather just hold out, walk away, even though he's under contract, and pay for something under $40 million. Well, one of the Rams' options apparently is Jimmy Garoppolo, who was a backup for them this past season. Now, what's interesting is that Garoppolo is not currently under contract for 2025. So the Rams would have to sign him. But I think that's a quarterback that you can get, since he hasn't started now in a little while, you can get at probably 10 to 20 million. You'd save a lot of money if you're the Rams. Probably for efficiency, it might even be better than what Stafford has given them over the past 3 years. Again, it's been very, very mediocre for Matthew Stafford. The one thing that he can hang his hat on is that he's played better in the postseason. But the Rams can come back and say, yeah, you've played better in the postseason since 2021 than you have in the regular season. But we're still 1-2 in those postseason games. We've lost to the Detroit Lions and your predecessor, Jared Goff, whom we traded you for in the 2023 season. We've beaten Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, so maybe that's reason to not move on to Sam Darnold. Maybe you are more valuable than Sam Darnold. And then, yeah, you played well against the Eagles, but you also lost that game. I mean, it's not like Stafford's gone 4-1 in the postseason over the past 3 years with another Super Bowl title under his belt. They've gone 1-2. So you've got struggling performance over the course of the past 3 years in the regular season. A lot of games where the Rams have just been atrocious offensively. It seems like people so easily forget about those. So you have this performance. This is what the data tells us. The tape isn't much better. I mean, I would say that the tape is even worse. Imagine where Stafford would be on this chart at the 49ers that actually caught the interceptions he served up to them. So you've got this, and then you have a postseason resume that, yes, is better from an efficiency perspective, but is worse from a won-loss perspective. And that doesn't help Matthew Stafford's case all too much either. Maybe he relents and realizes, hey, I'd rather play with Sean McVay, keep my family in warm LA versus, go somewhere where, I mean, he hasn't played for a team that plays its home games outdoors yet. Let's remember that. He's played college in Georgia. That was outdoors. But in the NFL, he played in Detroit and he's played with the Rams. Those are both teams with a roof. Now, technically, SoFi Stadium is considered an outdoor stadium. Make it make sense, but they had a lightning delay there. It's because there's open air, but there's still a roof. So the lightning's not going to strike them when they're playing. That was one of the more curious lightning delays that we'd seen here over the past few years. But Stafford has been an indoor quarterback for his career. All quarterbacks are better when they've got a dry football, good conditions. I think his family enjoys being in Southern California, but who knows? Maybe there will be a sucker. Maybe one of these teams right here is going to tell the Rams, we will pay over $50 million to Matthew Stafford, and we're going to send you valuable draft capital. And in that case, the Rams, who say that they're comfortable with Jimmy Garoppolo, according to Diana Rossini, I think would be okay making that move. I think they'd be excited to make that move, given where Stafford has been over the course of the past few seasons. Another piece of news, Martin Mayhew. He's a key former John Lynch lieutenant is retiring. Now, when Lynch was first hired in 2017, he didn't have any GM experience. So he turned to one of his friends, one of his former teammates, Martin Mayhew, a DB teammate of John Lynch's in Tampa Bay, who had been a general manager in Detroit for about 7 or 8 years at the time. And he said, hey, can you join me as a senior personnel executive so I can have somebody who's actually been a GM on or in the front office here in San Francisco? And Martin Mayhew said yes. And from 2017 to 2020, Martin Mayhew was an important mentor for John Lynch with the 49ers. Then Mayhew left to the Washington Commanders to be their GM. I think they were the Washington football team at the time. I think that was the official name at the time. He left to be their general manager in 2021. The 49ers, for this departure, for this promotion at the time, got a third-round comp pick. They used it on, drumroll, Jake Moody. That's going to make people upset. But they did get a third-round comp pick when Mayhew left. Then Adam Peters, a 49ers executive under John Lynch as well, left to become Washington's GM. So he replaced Martin Mayhew. But Mayhew, already toward the end of his career, decided to stay aboard with Washington. And he became a senior personnel executive under Adam Peters. A really cool 49ers connection there, right? Mayhew worked with Lynch and Peters in San Francisco. Then Mayhew was promoted to GM of Washington. When that didn't work out and Washington brought in Adam Peters, because there was that connection there between Mayhew and Peters, Peters kept Mayhew aboard. Mayhew was okay staying aboard, even though he was no longer the GM. And he saw some success in the final year of his NFL executive career. Well, Adam Peters let the media know here at the NFL Combine that Mayhew is retiring. So congratulations to Martin Mayhew on a very successful career as both a player, John Lynch's teammate, and a general manager, first with the Detroit Lions and then with the Washington Commanders. He was part of the whole 49ers build, though. And I think it's really important to note that Martin Mayhew was a guiding hand for John Lynch over those first 4 years with San Francisco. I also put this into the headline. Rob Gronkowski. According to a report, Gronkowski, who's still just 35 years old, not like he's 40. He's 35. I know in NFL years, that is a little bit long in the tooth, but we've seen older guys play. But Rob Gronkowski's a legend. He's in the running for the greatest tight end of all time. Supposedly, he is training up in Colorado Springs at altitude, and he's interested in making a return to the league. So Gronkowski at 35, a couple years of rest. His body was beaten up the last time that we saw him in the league playing for Tampa Bay. So maybe he's got fresh muscles now, no bruises. Maybe he's ready to make a little bit of a comeback. And no, I wouldn't say that he's going to be a featured guy anywhere. I can't say that until I actually see him play, because at age 35, after a couple years off, you do have your reservations. This is a hard league to succeed in. But given the pedigree, and this guy's going to be in the Hall of Fame, again, this is a GOAT at the tight end position. Given the pedigree and given the fact that the 49ers have desperately wanted a tight end too to pair with George Kittle, and Brock Purdy's a good, I know Kyle Shanahan doesn't like tossing up the fade ball, but Brock Purdy has been able to place that ball accurately for the 49ers, and the 49ers had big-time issues in the red zone this past year. I mean, they could have used a contested catch guy like Rob Gronkowski in the red zone. Who's to say never? If Rob Gronkowski comes back to the league, who's to say that the 49ers wouldn't be interested? Because I'm sure that he would sign for a reasonable amount. I don't think this would be a massive contract. Anyway, Gronkowski might be headed back to the NFL, and I would keep an eye on that. The report came out of the Denver area, and supposedly Sean Payton and the Broncos would be interested in Rob Gronkowski. At the right price, I don't see why anybody wouldn't be interested in Rob Gronkowski. I mean, he was that type of talent. And again, he's 35 years old. We'll just have to see how his body responds to this comeback effort. If he is training up at altitude, that was part of the story today, that could help him get ready for this NFL season. Never say never with a player of that talent. Other news coming out of the Combine here in Indianapolis, John Schneider, Seattle's general manager. We talked about Geno Smith, the Seahawks quarterback, yesterday. he's entering a lame duck year on his contract. There was a brouhaha on social media regarding Geno Smith because he posted the LeBron video, LeBron taking his bag and walking up out of a press conference, and people were wondering what's going on with Geno. Well, he doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his deal. Has put up decent results for the Seahawks over the course of the past few seasons. Anytime a player is entering a lame duck year on a contract, we expect some movement, especially at the quarterback position. Well, in the case of Geno Smith, the Seahawks are going to be sitting down with his representation to start talking about a contract extension. So based on what John Schneider said today at the Combine, expect Seattle to hang on to Geno Smith moving forward. So I told you guys it was a busy day here at the Combine. All this intel led by the 49ers stance on Brandon Aiyuk. I'm sure that John Lynch is going to be asked about that tomorrow, and I'm sure that he'll bust out the factor cap meme that we have with the duck walking around calling it cap, because no, the 49ers, they're not in a position where the numbers make sense to move Brandon Aiyuk. We have to look at contracts and term and dead money and the 49ers' own salary cap situation to piece together what the strategic moves are going to be from the 49ers perspective. And, you know, in the case of Deebo Samuel, they have pushed a lot of that dead money into the future, and it would have to accelerate if they traded him. But Brandon Ayuk's deal would make even more accelerate than a potential Deebo Samuel contract. And when I run the numbers for the 49ers salary cap, I'll show you guys my math right here. I think this is worth putting up onto the screen. Here's the 49ers 2020 salary cap situation. When I run the numbers for this, I've got them at $46.2 million right now in space, and they still have to sign more players. This is still with Purdy's old cap hit. It's before anything for George Kittle. They're going to work on an extension that lowers his number. I've got $46.2 million. The second that you start talking about Brandon Aiyuk, you're talking about a $40+ million dead money hit this offseason. So you gobble up almost all of the cap space this season. People have questions about moving Deebo Samuel because of the cap hit. That one is much more manageable because he's already at nearly $16 million, and then you'd be talking about a $30 million dead money hit. So it'd only be a $15 million charge. You can absorb an additional $15 million, way more than you can absorb an additional $30 to $40 million, which is what it would be for Brandon Aiyuk, because he's signed his deal much more recently than Deebo Samuel. So for better or for worse, the 49ers are tethered to Brandon Aiyuk. You can argue that they shouldn't have extended him last offseason. There were people, that was a stance that was gaining in popularity the longer that Brandon Aiyuk hold-in lasted. People were saying he's not behaving in a way that I would want to reward. And that's why there was such a, and we'll talk about a brouhaha. That's why there was such a brouhaha in the 49ers online community last offseason. People were sick of it. They just wanted Aiyuk traded. But, I mean, he was coming off of a damn good season in 2023, and the 49ers extended him. And, you know, there might be a little bit of regret about that now, but you are where you are. And once you pull the trigger on that kind of financial commitment, you're locked in for a good 2 years just because of the salary cap situation and the way that you've built that money to stretch out into the future. It's like a dam. Like, you know, back to the deal right here. You build a dam to stop, you know, look at the signing bonus column, look at the option bonus column. You stretch out the cap hit over 5 years of signing bonus, over 5 years of the option bonus, which kicks in this year on April 1st. As long as Aiyuk is under contract, that dam prevents the millions, 4.6, 4.6, 4.6, 9.5, 9.5, 9.5. It prevents the millions of cap hit of these bonuses from rushing forward and hitting in 2025. But the minute that you cut or you trade Brandon Aiyuk, all this money that's stretched out like an accordion into the future would crack through the dam. The dam would rupture and would flood your cap in 2025. So yeah, you're going to have to pay it anyway, but you've structured this and designed it so you're going to pay it in the future. You leave yourself room in the present for some mobility, some adaptability, and the 49ers have enough room to move on from Deebo Samuel in a trade this offseason. But in the case of Brandon Aiyuk, especially since that value probably will never be lower, at least in the near-term future, coming off the ACL and the MCL, you're just not in good position to do that. So that's why the 49ers are currently not interested. That's your big piece of intel here from the combine right now. Now I'm going to find out if they're interested in Rob Gronkowski if Rob decides to come back to the NFL this offseason. That would be crazy. And, we talk about the Rams and the former 49er, Jimmy Garoppolo, and the entire quarterback carousel. That much is really interesting to talk about because I've got to hand it to the Rams. This has been one of the more forward-thinking franchises in the NFL ever since Les Snead and Sean McVay took over. That was in 2017, same year that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over, 2017. Still remember the young Sean McVay on the sideline. And we were talking so much about the Rams and their go-for-broke mentality. It got them a Super Bowl. But what is truly intriguing to me is that the Rams not only went to the Super Bowl and won it and put themselves into salary cap hell while doing so, but they were able to rebound as quickly as they did afterwards. And you have to give a lot of credit to Snead for the way that he's drafted. Right? I mean, the reconstruction of the Rams defense, they had the lowest spend in the entire NFL defensively this past year. So they reconstructed that defense starting with the line through the draft. They did a fantastic job with it. Hat tip to the Rams for that portion of how they operated. And now, after the F them picks mentality that netted a Super Bowl and then the embrace of draft picks that has built a team that has bounced back from salary cap hell, their next move might be one that most of the rest of the league couldn't fathom making. And that's moving on from a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but doing so before it's too late, a year too early versus a year too late. The Rams are looking at efficiency. They're looking at tape. And guess what? If in an unbiased way, this reflects the tape. People can look at a highlight here and a highlight there and a no-look pass here from Matthew Stafford. But if you're looking at the totality of how he's performed over the past 3 years, it hasn't been great. And a record in the playoffs has been under 500. So the Rams are saying, we do not want to be in no man's land. We want to set ourselves up to potentially get our QB either in this draft or in the 2026 draft, or find somebody that's a veteran that could take us a longer way. We don't want to overpay since we've already been in salary cap hell earlier this decade. We don't want to overpay for Matthew Stafford on the downswing of his career. So they're playing hardball in this situation. We'll see how it ends up, but part of that hardball is saying we'd be okay with Jimmy Garoppolo, our backup, the former 49er, that maybe 10 to 20 million over Matthew Stafford. Diana Rossini said that Stafford wants 2 years, 110 million. It's 55 million a year. Sorry, you're not Brock Purdy. You're not 25 years old on the upswing of your career. You're not at that very number one spot in efficiency over the past 3 years. Stafford is way down here. He's 37. It's been declining. And the Rams, as a forward-thinking franchise, realize that, and they're going to try to score a good deal with Matthew Stafford. I don't see them paying him $55 million a year. That could be something that really puts them in a tough spot moving forward. So Aiyuk, Stafford, we even talked about Jonathan Allen today. I think that's a no from a lot of teams. That's been declining play. Speaking of a downward trajectory, the Washington defensive tackle, this was the first piece of news we actually got earlier today. Adam Peters obviously knows what he's doing. We saw him help build up the monstrous roster that the 49ers have enjoyed over the years with John Lynch, and then he quickly was able to turn things around in Washington. If he's ready to move on from Jonathan Allen, they're not ready to extend him. That should be sign enough for the rest of the NFL. I'm going to open this up to a 49ers Q&A here from Indianapolis. Ready for your questions here on this big Combine Intel show. We're approaching 1,000 people watching live on YouTube. We have a little bit more intel. Joe Rose revealed on his show this morning that he heard Tyreek Hill got former Miami Dolphins wide receivers coach Wes Welker fired. Wow. Has Welker signed anywhere else yet? I was wondering if he was going to go back into a different Shanahan tree spot. He'd been with San Francisco before. Tyreek Hill obviously causing some problems over there in Miami. There was some drama at the end of the season. They ended up pouring water on that drama, but it sounds like part of pouring water on that drama was firing Tyreek Hill. Brutal stuff. I'm going to head over into the comments section. Let's talk. What are some other veteran defensive line options besides Myles Garrett? Joey Bosa? Khalil Mack? Khalil Mack is scheduled to be a free agent. Like, cut and dry free agent. I don't expect him at age 34 to be extended by the Chargers, and especially since they're dealing with some cap issues. Joey Bosa, meanwhile, has a year left on the deal, but they might part ways with him sooner rather than later, given the fact that he's had his injury issues. So you look at a couple of those Chargers guys and you say, okay, that might make sense for the 49ers if they can get them at a reasonable rate. You know, everybody's saying, stay away from Joey Bosa. He gets hurt too often. Yeah, would you stay away from him at $6 million a year? I think that would be really tempting if you're the 49ers. If he just wants to play with his brother, already has well over $100 million in career earnings. Yeah, I mean, guys go ring chasing in this league. We've seen it happen before. And Joey Bosa has a familial connection to the 49ers. So if the Chargers part ways with him and the market isn't robust for him and he decides that he wants to go to a better offer from the 49ers, I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in it. Khalil Mack has shown to be more durable than Joey Bosa over the years. He's older, but he's going to be a free agent. He has the right to go ring chasing as well. I don't know if Max Crosby is a realistic option. I've talked about this before because the Raiders still have him under contract. They've got a new coach in Pete Carroll. Will Spytek, the new general manager, probably is not going to want to let go of one of the better edge rushers in the game who's still under contract for quite some time. Thanks for hitting that like button. Hell yes. If you haven't done it right now, hit the like button as we go through some of the day's happenings here from Indianapolis. This is our big 49ers Indy Combine Intel. We're talking about the trade interest in Brandon Aiyuk. We're talking about all of the news from today. Washington opened the trading. Jonathan Allen, who was at the top of his game about 3 seasons ago, no longer at the top of his game now. There's a reason they don't want to re-sign him as he enters his lame duck year. So I think the teams should be wary of that. We ran fact or cap. A Brandon Aiyuk trade is possible. Fact or cap? That is
C-A-P. Cap.
Now, I wonder if this is fact or cap. Are the Rams really comfortable with Jimmy Garoppolo in this Stafford saga? I actually think that the Rams mean business here. I don't think they're going to budge and give Matthew Stafford massive money. I don't think they're willing to cripple their outlook for a 37-year-old quarterback. I think people need to remember this. Like, quit relying on stereotypes. Quit saying, hey, oh yeah, Stafford, elite quarterback. Last time he's played at an elite level for a prolonged stretch of time was 2021. And they're also willing to move off of Cooper Kupp in LA. I just think it's fascinating. I give the Rams a lot of credit for pulling out the Bill Walsh philosophy. Move on a year too early rather than a year too late. Martin Mayhew is retiring. Big part of the 49ers construction here over the course of the past 8 or 9 years. Rob Gronkowski, is he coming back? We'll see. Myles Garrett, well, it's not an option until the Browns decide to make it an option. I think they should make it an option because I think Myles Garrett sees the truth as much as we do. The Browns aren't going anywhere. He wants off of that ship. The Browns are saying, we're close. Well, no, you're not. You don't have a quarterback. You decided to pay $230 million fully guaranteed. You decided to give out the worst contract in NFL history to Deshaun Watson. So mismanagement has led you to a terrible spot. One of the best defensive players in the NFL wants out. You're not willing to grant that, even though it's probably the best move for you to reset, get some value, recoup some value out of Myles Garrett, and move forward. But Andrew Berry, their general manager, he's probably fighting for his job at this point. He's not interested in such a move. Then there's John Schneider of the Seahawks saying that Seattle's about to work on a contract extension for their quarterback, Geno Smith. Broncos general manager George Payton on the Gronk rumors. I just heard that on my way over here. That's pretty cool that Rob Gronkowski wants to be a Bronco. Yeah, supposedly the Denver has been linked to the rumors for Rob Gronkowski, but I've got to say, if he's coming back, why wouldn't he consider all options? And I all I could think of, and this kind of ties into Gronkowski because he played for the Patriots. Niners against the Patriots this past season, George Kittle catching that pass in triple coverage. It's kind of a fade route, right? It was like a late progression, just toss up from Brock Purdy. Put it in a good spot. But Kittle going up and making that catch, that's the type of catch that Gronk, essentially made famous over the course of his career. Massive body, the ultimate contested catch. 49ers just haven't had a tight end two who could truly, legitimately put fear into opposing defenses when it came into the receiving game. And I think Rob Gronkowski, if it showed that his body was still ready to handle things, he's 35 years old. So it's not like he's ancient right now. It's not like he's a fossil. I think that would do it for the 49ers. So I think it would at least be something worth considering. Kittle did fracture some ribs. I don't know if it was on that play. Mike asking me if George Kittle fractured the ribs on that play. It could have been on that play because, 3 guys landed on top of him. It was still, despite that, it was the healthiest that George Kittle played a season in a long time, despite the fact that he was playing on a fractured rib. Guy's tough. They're going to extend George Kittle this offseason, and it's going to open up a lot of cap space for the 49ers. The Bengals are planning to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So that's going to surpass Justin Jefferson, who has the high water mark at this point. That's from Duke Tobin. Man, this combine intel is huge. So those of you who are aboard right now, as they just keep on delivering some of this news, make sure that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It does help the channel immensely. While you're here, go ahead and do that. Thank you very much. Yeah, George Kittle did say, this is from an interview a little bit earlier, I was playing with cracked ribs, and then that just fractured them completely. It was super fun. I had a great time. So the big fade catch from George Kittle against the New England Patriots came with cracked ribs that fractured them completely. Pay that guy his money. He was able to give you a 1,000-yard receiving season with cracked and then fully fractured ribs. And then while you're at it, paired Rob Gronkowski with George Kittle, Gronk coming out of retirement on the same team, and watch the internet break. That would be one of the most entertaining roster combinations of all time. Gronk really paved the way for tight ends to be as entertaining as George Kittle. See, Kittle has emulated a lot of what Gronk has brought to the table. So just take it up another notch and bring Gronk out of retirement, pair him up with Kittle on the 49ers. Gronk played his college ball out in Arizona, not too far from the Bay Area. So I want to see it happen. I think that's a content opportunity. Who wants the 49ers to trade Brandon Aiyuk? I want to see this in the comment section. Again, it would not financially make sense for San Francisco to do it, but rumors are rumors. Teams have been snooping around. They want to see if they can fleece the 49ers and buy low. San Francisco's not interested. Jason hopes the 49ers keep Greenlaw as well. Bring back Tom Brady while you're at it. Yeah, I think that it seems that Tom is safely retired at this point. He likes the TV gig. He likes owning the Raiders. Imagine owning the Raiders, still announcing games and playing quarterback at the same time. If there's anybody who could pull off the trifecta, the multitasking trifecta, I think it'd be Tom Brady. What's the cap hit if the 49ers move Aiyuk? It's massive. It is absolutely huge. I think they would take $42 million in dead money. If they're tethered to Aiyuk for the short term, they always keep a salary cap buffer. They push the money into the future so they can make moves and have flexibility, but that'd be a little bit extreme. Deebo Samuel makes sense. Brandon Aiyuk would be a little bit extreme for the 49ers. The only way that you do that is if you've so soured on him as a person, if you're watching this rehab and you're like, this guy doesn't want to be here at all. His attitude sucks. He's toxic to his teammates. Like, the only way is if you had completely given up on Brandon Aiyuk. You didn't, you just didn't want him in the building anymore. You're essentially paying to get him out of there. And you got a decent trade return, better than you think it would be in the future because you were so out on his performance and his prognosis. And I don't think the 49ers are there with Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think they're anywhere close to there. Yeah, he might have torn his ACL and MCL. He might have been a huge pain last offseason and during the season because he wasn't playing up to his usual level before the injury. But even then, I don't think the 49ers have reached that kind of tipping point. 49ers could go after Adams. Sure. How much would Adams want? Or is Adams willing to go ring chasing if and when he becomes available, as we expect to be the case? He wants to go ring chasing. He's from East Palo Alto. He went to Fresno State. That's always a wild card, is the guy who might be willing to play for a little less. So you always have to be cognizant of that. It's a rare thing. It's more likely that the guy's going to want to play for market value. And if that's the case, yeah, it's a lot harder for the 49ers to make that kind of move. It's a deep class at wide receiver. It's a deep class at defensive tackle. Got a lot of good edge rushers. Got a lot of good tight ends, by the way. So you got to consider that when you're talking about Rob Gronkowski too. I'll have a Moody update for you tomorrow because I speak to John Lynch tomorrow. Cooper Kupp, I don't think the Rams are going to trade Cooper within the division. They still have him under contract. Zane Gonzalez is going to be available next month. He's one of the free agent kickers, yes. Yep, a guy getting traded 1 year after a big extension. I don't know when the last time it happened is or if it ever happened, but the 49ers are not in position to do it. And then I'm not going to clickbait you, but I'm definitely going to report on the interest. And I shut it down right away. That's what we have to do. I shut it down right away. We use it as a salary cap lesson. Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings hold it down until Brandon Aiyuk is ready. Sure. But, receiver's one of those positions where you can never have enough talent. The 49ers finished last season ranked dead last in average separation at the time of catch or incompletion. It was brutal for San Francisco last year. And it was because Aiyuk wasn't in shape and then he was hurt and McCaffrey was out. They were relying too much on Deebo Samuel, and all these injuries led to the receiving core not being able to separate against man coverage. So the 49ers found themselves in between a rock and a hard place. Your best path forward, given the situation you're in right now, is yes, to let Brandon Aiyuk get healthy, hope that Pearsall takes the next step. He looked great over the final 2 games of the season. Hope that Jennings continues being a dog out on the football field. And I think insulating yourself even more, whether it be through the draft or through a free agent signing that makes sense. Now, somebody like Darius Slayton, Elijah Moore, those are free agents that should come at an attainable cost just based on their market value. But maybe somebody like Devontae Adams decides to go ring chasing. Maybe he decides this is where he wants to be. I'm not saying the chances are high, but I'm saying that you leave no stone unturned. All right, we've gone 49 minutes. That was the goal. Big combine intel. We had about 1,000 of you guys in here. That was really cool. So this is where I want to finish. Brandon Aiyuk numbers just don't make sense. No, trade won't happen. The Rams, though, they're comfortable with Jimmy G if the Matthew Stafford numbers continue not making sense. Martin Mayhew, the former Lynch lieutenant with the 49ers, has retired. Rob Gronkowski may be unretiring. I think that would make sense as a tight end too. With George Kittle, definitely makes sense from an entertainment standpoint. Andrew Berry says the Browns aren't trading Myles Garrett, and John Schneider says that Geno Smith and his reps will meet soon. All right, that's it from the Combine. I'm ending now at 49 minutes.